Can't hear you.
You are muted.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's webinar on innovation mindset, a human response to AI. We have an exciting panel of experts who will shed light on the intersection of innovation, AI, and human ingenuity. My name is Lisa, and I will be introducing the guest and for today's session. Let's introduce our esteemed speakers. Our first speaker is Jaraj Mashru, a seasoned innovator who has worked as Director of Innovation at Salesforce and is the founder of Bombay Innovation Group. He brings a wealth of experience in leveraging technology to drive innovation. Joining us next is Ajit Khurana, founder of Reflexical, a Web3 and blockchain consulting organization. Ajit has served as an advisor to Kalari Capital. He brings deep insights into the emerging trends and potential of AI in the Web3 landscape. Finally, we have our own Dr.Suyash Bhatt, Director at AFTI. Dr. Suyash is a highly accomplished and experienced professional with expertise in finance, technology, and innovation. Before I head over to Dr. Suyash, let me briefly introduce today's theme for webinar: Innovation Mindset, Human Response to AI. An innovation mindset refers to a way of thinking and approaching challenges with a focus on creativity, continuous improvement, and the pursuit of new and better solutions. When it comes to countering the challenges associated with generative AI, the foremost is ethical considerations. Generative AI raises ethical concerns such as privacy, fairness, and accountability. In my opinion, an innovation mindset helps counter the challenges of generative AI by fostering creative thinking, adaptability, ethical considerations, collaboration, and a user-centered approach. It enables individuals to identify new possibilities, adapt to emerging trends, address ethical concerns, collaborate effectively, and ensure that generative AI technologies are developed and used in a responsible and user-centric manner.
So welcome, and this was our introduction given by human-like AI, which introduced us, and this also sets a tone for what is expected. It's exciting as well as scary. If you see from a perspective of what can be an impact of this on jobs or even in the market perspective. So let me probably begin by asking Jairaj that we did see the machine telling us, what could be an innovation mindset, but can you throw a light on what exactly do we mean by innovation mindset, especially now that we have an AI in picture like ChatGPT and all other things. Over to you, Jairaj.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Salam, namaste, welcome, hello. Thanks, Lisa, for that wonderful introduction. I don't think I've ever been introduced by an AI bot before, and I think it's not that scary for me. I think it was great. It was good. I can almost already see that otherwise, Suyash, you would have had to be the moderator, but now you can actually be more of a participant on the panel with us because, there's a AI bot who can step in. Yeah, innovation mindset. It's interesting that you suffix the question with now that we have AI. When I almost wondered, wasn't it the innovation mindset that helped us get to this point in the first place? So why should that change? I mean, the mindset remains the same no matter what era we're living in, before AI or post AI or whatever, before COVID, post COVID. I don't think any of these things have changed the mindset of an innovator when it comes to innovation. We still need to be creative, of course, it's the core, and it is still a human characteristic. I think AI has matured enough to a point where it can mimic human creativity very well. If we give some prompts, it can try and mimic what a human would make out of those prompts. But I don't think AI has matured enough, and Ajit can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think AI can be inherently, intrinsically creative itself. And therein lies a big distinction, because creativity is not just creative, right? It means something. There is meaning behind that. Two ideas are different because they mean two different things. That meaning, generating that meaning, is something that humans still do. And I don't think AI has achieved that yet. When it does, I might be a bit more scared. And I did, Suyash, ask the same question to ChatGPT. What is an innovation mindset? If you're a business consultant or a professor, tell us what an innovation mindset is. And it was surprisingly very similar to my notes. Maybe the order of information was slightly different. So yeah, I might have to figure out a new way to make money soon. But, beyond creativity, the very first step, I think, is about curiosity. And that, I think, AI can teach us very well, because AI obviously is very, very good at learning. We have to really become very good at learning. In fact, the better we are at it, the better chance we have at coexisting in a meaningful world with each other and with AI. So yeah, learning, curiosity, be curious about problems around you, be curious about your customer and their problems, global challenges that we're facing, even be curious about the new emerging technologies and how to leverage them, right? That will, I think, help mitigate some of that fear as well. The more you understand the unknown, the less scared you are of it. Which then brings me to the second thing. You have to have a lot of courage to innovate. There's failure, lots of it. Most of it is actually failure until you finally hit that working idea, the idea that clicks, the idea that works. You're pretty much failing all the time. So have courage to experiment, and experiment even with these new technologies like we are today with Lisa. And it shows a lot of courage for all of us to invite Lisa into our conversation, and to collaborate with each other. I think that's the key. That's one thing that I don't see AI doing very soon, is collaborating. Yeah, you can bring AI into, for example, Adobe Illustrator, and now you can generate wonderful images without being the best graphic designer and having spent years and years in school trying to learn how to design. You can now do it in a couple of hours. You can learn how to do that. But human collaboration, I think, because we think differently, all of us have different experiences and backgrounds. That's like almost bringing in different AIs into the collaboration, which maybe someday we might get there. But in the meanwhile, I think the innovator's mindset primarily for me revolves around curiosity, courage, collaboration, creativity, these kinds of things. Ajit, something you'd like to add? Unmute, please.
You're on mute.
Yeah, there's always something to add. So first, let me just throw out a little anecdote. I did my bachelor's of engineering, concluding in the year 1991. And the significance of that to this conversation is that the academic year 1991, which is my final year of engineering, became the very first year in India, all of India, where AI was taught as a full subject, not just a part or a chapter or footnote, but a full subject to computer engineering students in University of Mumbai as an elective subject. And crazily enough, I started in 87 when people were not valuing computer engineers too much, because they were like, you guys are just glorified typists, because hardly anybody had access to computers. And by the time 4 years elapsed and we had AI as a subject, we were told in the year 1991 that with AI, which at that point meant neural networks and parallel computing, eventually it became deep learning, and today machine learning version is the most popular. But at that time, we were told that you will not get a job because the AI will take over all your jobs. Now, today we are sitting 32 years later, and we are being told that AI will take away all your jobs. As with all other innovation cycles, the first spark of innovation always leads us to believe that, oh my God, everything will change. Then for a long time, nothing changes. And then we give up, say, yeah, I've heard that before. And then everything changes. So I think we are at that second everything changes part of AI. First, let me talk about innovation. So what is innovation? Why does it go so closely with another word called creativity? And why those who may be less creative might actually regard it as randomness or arbitrariness? I think that, and this is my own definition, it's not a textbook definition. I think that innovation is creativity that creates, creativity that creates something, as opposed to randomness. For example, right now, if suddenly during this session, I start singing a song, and that to an irrelevant song, that is randomness, right? Now, somebody could be charitable and say, oh, Ajit is so creative, he does not talk in a webinar, he sings in a webinar. But I may not have created any value by virtue of doing that, in which case it would not come under the purview of innovation. So this is where I think that having an access to all the information, yet presenting it in a different way, could be the first step of innovation, which is where AI has already achieved, because AI has access to all the information and it is able to present it in a way that might seem valuable to me. So the first step of innovation has been reached. To take innovation further, the data set that you use itself should be of your own creation. It should, the creativity element could come in, as opposed to the rearrangement element. Now, I think that we are currently seeing two extreme reactions to AI when it comes to innovation. One set of people feel that, hey, it's a machine, right? Like Lisa, who talked to us, talked well, but she doesn't have emotions, right? She really can't think for herself, right? Her data set is coming from a set that we gave her, right? So that is one set which I think this set underestimates the power of AI. Then there is the other set which I think at present overestimates the belief of AI, which basically says that, that all human purpose, such as scientifically oriented tasks, such as coding, etc., are already AI-driven coding, testing, etc. But even something like writing poetry, for example, which we would have thought as the one of the culminations of human creativity, you can go to chat-based AI interfaces and ask it to write a poem and give it some prompts, and you will realize that the poem it wrote, while it might potentially be inspired by data, but it seems pretty relevant and pretty original. So these are the people who believe that there is no purpose left for human beings, and unless everybody is provided a universal basic income, the human beings will actually cease to exist. I think that at least the way things stand today, I don't know how it will be tomorrow, but at least the way things stand today, AI is more powerful than most people believe, but still not as scary as an AGI or a general artificial intelligence would end up becoming. I see today, at the very least, AI being an instrument of innovation, a tool of innovation. Whether this will extend further and replace innovation by AI innovation remains to be seen. It was just yesterday that somebody who was using some of these graphic tools, artificially intelligent tools, where you can go and say that in oil painting style make this, or in Picasso style make this, where you can suggest styles, right? This person had gone ahead and created new styles which don't exist using AI. And indeed, the images we saw out of those were the kinds that you've never seen before. So I think that it is not just the state of AI, but our ability to use it. We all can use a knife, but the way a very, very, let us say, experienced chef would cut, let's say, an onion versus how I would cut an onion would be very different. But the difference is not the knife. The difference is the person who's using the knife. So those are my opening thoughts on this topic. Thank you.
That's a very interesting part that you brought about creativity, and even from an artist perspective. I read somewhere where I think there was a photographer called Boris Eldexon who actually got the award for a World Photography Award. The picture was called The Electrician, and once he got the award, after that he said that it was an AI generated image. So I mean, it's and he did it on purpose just to show that they are able to, the machine is able to beat his work, and also probably end up getting an award for him, which he could not get it otherwise. So that's very interesting. And so with this kind of a very interesting perspective that we got, Ajit, if you could explain what exactly is this entire business of generative AI? Because I know that in school or in engineering college, we went through these algorithms where how do you play chess, and the computer uses, and we called it maybe that was called as maybe AI at that time, but it was basically pure numerical calculation. I'm not sure whether it could fall into the category of generative AI. But so what exactly is this generative AI, and how is it different from what we have probably been exposed to till now?
So I think that at the heart of it, we are still doing data analytics. And data analytics is, you could say, an area of the overall area of statistics. The difference is that earlier what would happen is, for example, if we were playing a chess game on the computer, and we would find even 30 years ago that almost all of us would lose to the chess game. That means the computer was playing better than us. There were some who could potentially beat the chess program. Now, there are two interesting things that came out of that. Number one, was the computer program 30 years ago intelligently playing against me or algorithmically playing against me? Now, that is not probably the best technical terms to use, but by algorithmically, I'll give you an example that suppose there is a set of moves that I make which defeat the software program. This is 30 years ago. I could play again with the computer and play the same set of moves and defeat it again, right? That means the computer had a set of rules, but it was not learning from previous experience. I think that this learning element itself is a huge differentiator between what we would earlier use data analytics and statistics for, and today what AI is all about. But I think that it is, while it is that, it is also that the data analytics part of it is a little better. Like if you want me to explain it in a very loose fashion, as in a very layman-like experience. So let us just say you ask me a question, such as you say, okay, Ajit, and I'm an AI. You say, Ajit, tell me a joke, right? Now, I as an AI have been given a very loose instruction. You have not told me that, give me a joke about a man who goes to a bar and meets a horse there. So thereby you're at least prompting me as to what the joke could have. You're saying, Ajit, tell me a joke. And today you could go to some of the chat-based AI interfaces and actually literally say, tell me a joke. In fact, if you have any of those what are called intelligent speakers, such as Alexa, you could say, in fact, if I said it right now, there's a speaker next to me, it might start telling me a joke. Right? So how does the process from that instruction of tell me a joke result in the AI telling you a joke which is usually funny? As in, there are very rare occasions when you find that this was not funny at all. So is it that there is that infinite database of jokes or a very large database of jokes that the AI has, and it pulls out one and gives it to me? And had I give any more specifications, then it chooses the appropriate joke. So is it an intelligent database retrieval system? Well, it does have elements of an intelligent database retrieval system, but it is not restricted to that, because that could have been done 30 years ago. Database technology was fairly advanced even in the late 80s or early 90s. What is happening is that it is actually trying to figure out, it is going one level deeper, and it is saying, okay, if somebody says, tell me a poetry, or recite me a poetry, or tell me a joke, first it understands the difference between those two things. Then it knows what constitutes a joke and takes certain elements available to it and effectively creates some random model in its own head. It has not yet told me the joke. It creates a random model, putting all the elements in, and then say, okay, whatever was my understanding of a joke, based on what people have referred to as a joke earlier, does this meet many of the criteria? Never all, because otherwise we would have reached the perfect joke. Okay, that there is an element of shock, there is an element of language usage which is surprising, there is an element of certain types of characters or interaction. So it looks at what we have classified as a joke in the past and matches that. Are many of the characters met? If many of the characteristics are met, it will throw it out and then assume that it has told us a joke. In many of the AI interfaces, such as if you use Bard by Google, you can interact back with the output. Actually, almost all of them you can interact back. So based on me saying that, no, I didn't like this, change this to this, etc., its original algorithm, not the algorithm it is using for me, is getting improved. So the good thing or the bad thing or the powerful thing about the generative element is that not just does it learn, but it continues to learn, continues to create original pieces. For example, a joke that your AI will tell you will not necessarily be the joke that was ever spoken in the world, right? But it is based on the frameworks that are created by us in the past.
True. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. In fact, I I played with this chat GPT tool and asked it that, rather than asking, tell me a joke, I said, tell me a joke on cybersecurity. And I thought, let me give a complex problem to it. So it came up and said that, why would a cybersecurity guy dump his girlfriend? And I mean, I didn't know the answer. So I said, why? So then he said, because the girlfriend kept password as password. And I was like, okay, that's funny.
Now,
So
let me throw something at you. You said that tell me a joke seems like a simpler instruction, and tell me a joke about cybersecurity seems like a tougher instruction. When we were young, and I would go to my mom and tell her, cook me something, she would find that very complex. But if I said, cook me something with egg, she would find that easier. Though I had added a variable, I gave her some direction. If I would tell her, cook me something, she would say, what do you want me to cook? You tell me something, right? So actually, by saying that, tell me a joke about cybersecurity, you made it easier for the AI to guess what you would find funny, right? I just wanted to throw that out.
correct. Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, I get surprised daily when I deal with ChatGPT, trying to play with it, trying to figure out what all things it can do. So that brings us to the next question. So, Jairaj, if you could probably explain or probably share, uh, why is it important for organizations to create an innovation mindset amongst their employee, especially in the current context?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I totally agree with Ajit that AI is the tool in our hands, and how we use it, how much we understand what it is as a tool, what it can do, is that much better. I think that we will find outcomes and value from it. And I think that's one of the reasons, I think, with this shift as well, with technology, every couple of years there's a new shift. In the last couple of years we had a organizational shift simply because of the pandemic. These are all external forces that are going to force a company essentially to adapt or die. It's that simple. It's a Darwinian principle, and we've all heard the phrase survival of the fittest or the strongest or whatever, but actually that's a very poor mistranslation or misunderstanding of what Darwin and what evolution is teaching us. It's about survival of the most adaptable to change. That's actually what the phrase means. And this is yet again that opportunity. So take for example, in the telecom world, there was a time when Nokia was the king. Then there was a time when BlackBerry was the king as well for a brief time. And now it's, really between Apple and Samsung. Earlier it was between probably Nokia and Motorola as 1 and 2. What happened, and how did these companies go up and down in their valuations and their popularity, and in basically as a function of their innovation? And I find that there is a very interesting story over here. For example, for a long time, Nokia was world's #1 phone. But then as technology started improving, screen sizes became bigger, more affordable at a bigger size, better resolution. Touchscreen became a real thing. Nokia refused to change and evolve, but others did. And suddenly you find, a world where BlackBerry was able to fit a full keyboard, a QWERTY keyboard. Nokia usually only had the numeric keyboard. Business applications usually drive a lot of the innovation. So in that sense, BlackBerry got a chance to come up because it was the most secure phone. It had this keyboard, and BlackBerry Messenger was really powerful. But then they also didn't evolve with interoperability. And suddenly you have an iPhone and WhatsApp that destroys both Nokia and BlackBerry simultaneously in a matter of few years. And Samsung was the really clever competitor here, I think, in this market. They did something remarkable. They created a second mover advantage. Perhaps one of the most distinct cases where I've come across a second mover advantage, right? They waited for the market to figure out which aspect of the phone's features are really the most commanding ones. Because during this whole shift, between Apple, Nokia, Motorola, BlackBerry. A lot of other brands were also there. Phones were competing on screen size, battery life, camera, everything. Apple didn't know whether it was the apps that would make their phone popular or whether it was putting the music and the pictures inside the phone. There were lots of different cases in the consumer market, right? Once you get out of the business and get into the consumer market, they needed to figure that out. Apple had a very homogeneous portfolio in consumer electronics. So lots of R&D investment and learning happening in one focused area. Samsung is a family-run business, very diverse portfolio, very, very different kind of markets. So they may have had a constraint in how much they could invest in the learning curve of this fast-moving technology of telecom, smartphones, and things like that. So they waited. They just literally waited for Apple and the market to figure it out. And then they doubled down on screen size, battery life, camera, all the things that they needed to make the second best phone, apparently as close to an iPhone as possible. They also got sued for it in many markets, but they caught up very quickly with arguably far less investment than any other telecom company ever made to reach the #1 spot. And so this is the innovation mindset. Look at all of these companies. Those who didn't adapt enough, those who did adapt, those who innovated and brought a BlackBerry didn't adapt, but to compete with Nokia, they brought something new to the table. They pushed the curve further of technology innovation, bringing in different features, which opened up the business market and literally paved the way for the consumers because now that I'm in the office and I have a work phone as a mobile phone, certainly the rest of my family, my wife, my kids, everyone's going to want a personal phone. It's just a matter of time that consumer smartphones would come into the market, and that's where the whole Apple and Samsung story begins. There's just remarkable kind of learnings that, what is the power of an innovation mindset and why a company should always allow a certain level of experimentation, and which is going to cost them in efficiency. Capital efficiency is going to get affected a little bit when you try to innovate, but you have to, otherwise you just won't survive.
That's interesting. So I also probably want you to later share with me about this efficiency part, which we discussed before we went live. I think I want that example also to be shared. That was also something interesting. So,
actually, I'm happy to, whenever you like, now, later, just let me know.
So I'll come back to you, Jairaj. So Ajit, so most of so we today had this webinar where primarily we target, the participants that we have are from GCC, typically UAE, as well as KSA. This is the major crowd that typically joins our webinar. We had a last one on CBDC and crypto. This time we had more than 100. So, I'm not running an organization, so I had to manage everything. So I got a little overwhelmed. I didn't expect. So that's why we kept it in a format where it's streamed live. So I wanted to ask you this question from typically a bank. So if I'm a C-suite kind of a person from a bank, and I want to foster innovation in my bank. So typically, how they see is that, it's not my job, it's an innovation department's job. So how do you foster this as a mindset in a structured organization like a bank, which loves regulation, wants to work in their, those defined boundaries? So if we were to bring innovation mindset in a banking organization, how could we probably do that? You're mute.
This happens at two levels, at the individual's level as well as the C-suite's level. So let's begin with the exact question you asked me about C-suite. While on the one hand, banks follow rules, regulations, the room for innovating in products tends to be relatively little. There might be room for innovation in communication, messaging, etc. Because in the products, that tends to have a lot of central bank guideline or global established practices, etc. This gives the impression that it is a relatively staid and steady business. However, without any doubt, in every region of the world, you notice that bank shutdowns, either through acquisition, failure, lack of growth, etc., is very, very common. In other economies such as the US, this happens all the more, but even all over Europe, we see this. And if this does not happen in some territories to the same extent, let us say, for example, in India, it is also because banks are not allowed to take birth very easily. So as a result, they don't die very easily. But banking is certainly an industry. Banking is certainly an industry which runs the risk of individual banks becoming unviable. Now, if you are going to become unviable for whatever reason, what are the few things that you would do to continue to live in the face of imminent extinction? I think that cutting costs could be one very important factor. On the flip side of it, increasing profitability could be a factor. Third, which probably has been seen as why some banks have done so much better than the other, is extremely fast growth could be a factor where you are being inefficient in many things, but your growth is so much that it is clouding the fact that it is inefficient. So these are some of the levers, and there could be others. Now, when you have these accounting or financial controller people who have taken care of the expense side, when you have the usual business development, customer acquisition people who have tried to grow, and the usual things, the hygiene factors have been done by all the departments of the bank, now everybody is at the same level. So everybody is now at a 60 out of 100. If 60 out of 100 presents a stable state where extinction is not facing us, actually banks would become boring old organizations, as let us say some other businesses have become, and would never really innovate. But the pressures, because banking is also a global industry and is facing pressure from the fintech part of the world and the non-banking financial institution part of the world, those pressures are so severe that today even very, very old banks are coming up with digital versions of themselves where they are talking as if they are youngsters, etc. And the driver, so this is where my crux of the answer is, there could be a C-suite executive who is just oriented towards innovation. That is called good luck. We will leave that aside. But other than falling into such good luck, in reality, if a bank's innovation quotient, IQ, innovation quotient, could actually be correlated with the probability of the bank surviving, we will come to thriving later. I'm talking of surviving. I think that everybody would know that their job is on the line, their organization is on the line, and people will come in. The problem tends to be, just like, if I may just take a easier to understand example compared to innovation of HR. So HR includes recruitment, we will leave that aside, but let us say improvement of a person's morale, improvement of a person's skill set, improvement of a person's sense of well-being, belongingness, or ownership of the process. These sound like HR functions, but literally every manager in the organization should do them. They can't leave this to the HR department. Likewise, if you leave all of these things to the innovation department or the incubator or the corporate innovation program, that is basically saying that I don't need to be a good boss because my subordinates' perception towards the organization is dependent on the HR department, not on me. It is completely bizarre, and there has to be a sensitivity to correlation between a bank's viability, an organization's viability, broadly speaking, and its innovation level.
True, very, very interesting. So I will probably now ask Gerard to share this example that he shared with me, and then I'll ask a question to Lisa.
Yeah, sure. I was just telling Suyash earlier about how we have come to realize, I think, that human beings, first of all, as a species, we are not very efficient. We are perhaps one of the least efficient species alive on this planet. And yet we are forcing ourselves to fit into an industrialized commercial model that is driven by efficiency. So there is a disconnect there. And I think one of the things that emerged out of this anthropological study was that the thing that human beings are best at doing is we are lazy. We are actually, our brain is also, it works because it is lazy. There are standard neural paths that, we try to cut through the straight line and get to the answer. These are all things that inhibit our creativity. But actually the thing is, we are meant to be lazy, inefficient, and fool around and play. It is what we have done for almost 90% of our existence on this planet. And it is what has led to most of our fundamental foundational innovations in what we do as society. Like just ask yourself, how did we discover cheese or chocolate or coffee or any of these things? It was all because we were fooling around. We were not trying to be efficient in and do a repeatable process to generate profit or value for some shareholder who you don't even know or something like that. It was, we were fooling around for our own joy, and we need to create that environment even in this animal called corporates, which thrive on efficiency. In that, we just need that. Whether you create an innovation lab as an environment where you can go in and do that, or whether it's a, something that exists in, like, for example, technology companies have this very common. Most IT companies will have a playroom area almost in all their offices, in all their office spaces. Even the office environment is very playful and open layouts and all these things. Now it's becoming popular in other industries as well. Banks, for example, a long time ago, I remember a bank in the US wanted to get more Gen Z customers, and they literally just changed the branch into a coffee shop. And you didn't have to have a bank account to come and have free coffee in that coffee shop. But college kids would love to go and get that free cup of coffee. And then suddenly Capital One started getting the highest number of credit card subscriptions, I think, that year in the US. And it's a great way to think about, bringing these things together. How do you foster innovation amongst your employees? How do you open up and collaborate with third party? But also, how do you invite the customer into your innovation process? And just create these small moments of play. And I think that's a great first step towards a human response to AI as well. If we have to innovate faster than AI can innovate, then we're going to have to figure out some of these fundamental things for ourselves.
True, very true. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. In fact, I had been to one of the events that happened here in Dubai, where there was a bank, and I asked, what kind of payment or what service do you offer? And they said that, no, we are basically a white label bank, and you can offer banking service using us. And I was like, okay, I had never heard of something like this. And then when I researched a bit, I found that, there are so many of them already existing. So, I mean, this is a very interesting way in which this entire industry is moving. And I think some of the ideas that you shared, having a coffee shop, and then, probably it resulting into some kind of engagement, and then business at the end would be a very different approach that maybe top CEO should be probably looking at business from this perspective, rather than hire a battalion of people who are going to call and chase people to buy cards and all that. So very, very interesting. Thank you. So we'll now ask this question to Lisa, and that if we as humans were to compete with AI bots like you, how would we cope up with that?
Thank you, Dr. Suyash. That's a very valid question. In my opinion, humans can thrive and compete with generative AI in following ways: 1. Foster creativity and innovation. Cultivate and harness human creativity to generate new service offerings, identify unmet needs, and design innovative solutions. Encourage a culture of exploration, experimentation, and continuous improvement to stay ahead of AI systems. 2. Upskill and adapt. Stay abreast of emerging technologies, including AI, and continuously upskill to acquire new knowledge and capabilities. Adapt to changing customer demands and market dynamics. In my opinion, humans possess unique qualities such as creativity, adaptability, emotional intelligence, and complex problem-solving abilities that are challenging for AI to replicate. By leveraging these strengths, individuals can not only survive but also thrive in the service economy.
So yeah, that's a very interesting take on it, and I think it covered a lot of things that we discussed, I think, and did touch base on. So that brings us to a new part where I would like to ask both of you this question. So let me ask first Jairaj this question, or let me ask Ajit this question, and then I'll go to Jairaj. So what do you think would be an impact of all this new developments that are happening in the world of AI on companies, and especially existing human capital. Like I do a lot of training here, and when we train these bank employees, not to scare them, but I mean the ones who are maybe typically a teller in a branch. We have this discussion that, do you think you'll have a job 5 years from now? And they have this feeling that maybe they will, but I mean, from what is happening, I feel they're the first one who'll get, either fired, or probably they'll have to get retrained. So, what are your thoughts on this in terms of impact of all this that is happening on human capital?
So over the past, year and a half, that AI has become very popular, a topic to discuss. I have come across at least 24 different professions which have been labeled as the first to go. So there are 24 firsts. Just keep that in mind. As in, people have said lawyers would be the first. People have even said doctors, general practitioners would be the first. Said judges will be the first. Now you tell me bank tellers would be the first. So there are many firsts. Let's put it that way. Now, what this does is that it begs two questions. I'll give you one very interesting example. Again, going back to my final year as an engineering student, somehow today's conversation is stirring up a lot of old memories. We have to do a project. And the project that we had done was seen as extremely cutting edge, far, far higher than usually people do. It was basically creating a program generator, which means we wrote a program which writes computer programs. So it asks a set of questions and has some menu options, and you do that, and it actually spits out the entire code for you. Now you can take this code and whatever you want to do with it. And while this was capable of writing only one category of programs, we wanted to prove that if extended, this could do away with the need for programmers entirely. Very interestingly, one of the popular founders of a major Indian software giant called Infosys, about 10 days ago, was asked whether AI will take away programmers' jobs. And he gave an example which blew my mind and caused me to rush back 30 years in my life. He said that in the late 80s and early 90s, there were these things called program generators. So crazy, right? And that was my final year project. And it was at that time said that these will take away human jobs, and they didn't. And AI is similar. I don't know whether that analogy he made is perfect, but I think that its sentiment is perfect. Namely, if indeed the job of, let us say, a bank teller is the kind which cannot be upgraded to provide functions which are not extremely algorithmic or repetitive, then indeed it will go away. And I hope there aren't too many bank tellers listening to this conversation when I say that it should probably go away. As in, the human beings are probably meant for tasks which require a certain humanity to them, right? As opposed to just standing at a place and doing nothing. Just such as an example, electronic surveillance and security measures are now to some extent replacing security guards, though physical security guards are still required. With the advent of robotics controlled by AI, even that may not be required. So I think that in every area, for example, just earlier today, I was talking to 3 people who have constituted a new law firm. And it's a brand new law firm, barely a month old, and they are they are trying to get customers. And while they have pre-existing relations, they were not able to get customers so far. And they were just generally brainstorming with me and getting ideas as to how to do business development. And I said, you know what? Several areas of the practice that you do have become commodity, which means one lawyer and another lawyer and a third lawyer are basically doing the same thing. And prices are also in the same ballpark. So if I, as a customer, want to choose one, who will I choose? And I concluded, I will choose the one where I have a greater degree of comfort. Now, this comfort presents an intangible, right? While all other things are tangible. And I said that you have to find out how a customer will feel more comfortable with you. It could be ranging from from the type of language you use, to the type of follow-up you'd use, to whatever else it is that you do to make the customer comfortable. This, for example, could be extended to how a teller operates. For example, suppose you have a robot or a machine or an automatic teller machine, ATM, which has always existed, that is indistinguishable. But if there's a teller sitting at a counter and a person develops a certain comfort with a certain teller or an organization's approach to being a teller, that could be sufficient differentiator for a person to move their business or to retain their business here. So this explanation that I gave you for the law firm or the program generator or the teller, I think that at least the next step, I'm not saying the next 10 steps, because the challenges being thrown up by AI actually are even confounding our limitations of thinking. But at least the next step, I think we can secure all our jobs by bringing the human touch to it.
Very. Well, that's very interesting. But here, I think in this, especially in the market that we operate in here, many I have seen that, you know, when they say digital transformation, digitization, so they for them, the moment they automate, you're terminating that relationship based banking. You're moving to transaction based banking, and the moment you move to that, over a period of time, I've lost that personal touch, or, you know, that confidence that I have. And that's why then it doesn't matter whether you're a bank with a red color logo or a blue color logo. It doesn't matter what's the cost and which is the least, and I'll go with that. So, you know, that becomes a differentiator. Also, for the law firm example that you gave, I think I'd written one article last week on, there's a company in US, do not pay, and they do a very good job of settling these cases of parking ticket fines that they get, and I think they fought some 250,000 cases, and some law firm who got affected by this took them to court and said that, you know, did your AI go to a law school, and, you know, do they have a degree? And if they don't, then they can't practice law. So but it's very interesting the way things are moving, and you know, how solutions that are developed are much more efficient, or probably even much more I would say faster in terms of response than probably some of the tasks that humans could do. So over to you now, Jairaj. What is your thought on this? You're on mute.
Of course. Sorry about that. Look, I think I mostly agree with almost everything that Ajit said. It is scary. It will be painful, and I really do. I feel the pain. I get it. I think most jobs, as currently defined, regardless of industry or level or whatever, will have to be augmented in a world that it can leverage tools like AI and continue to add a human aspect of value beyond it. And why just the bank teller? I think the job of a CFO should be the first. Why does anybody need a CFO if AI is there? I would trust an AI CFO much more than a human CFO immediately today, simply because that job is so mathematically driven, that and judgment and risk and all are so much more computationally mature, that the trust is already there, that I would trust a machine for certain things more than a human immediately today. We already do, like traffic lights. When we drive, are machine operated in the whole city. There's no human being who's saying red, green. And we totally trust it all over the world. So why, I mean, yeah, driverless car seems a bit of a stretch now, but imagine actually the error of an accident is usually a human error. An automated traffic signal system needs an autonomous vehicle to prevent all accidents. And then all of a sudden, the job that you should be scared of going away is not the driver's job or the police officer's job, is the entire auto insurance industry that is going to get disrupted. What are you going to do then? So, I mean, there are things like this, which I think if you take a slightly, and it's easier for me to say that as a consultant or whatever, as an academic, it's a policymaker, if you make it impersonal enough, you can take a longer and broader view and say, what is better for mankind? What is better for the planet? And then the answer is very different, as opposed to, my job is getting affected today. It becomes very personal, and then it becomes more scary. But I think that we have all been through pains. I think one of the human capabilities is to endure and overcome challenges. And this is just another opportunity for us to, impress our own selves with what we are capable of. We need better jobs and jobs that can be done by machines would, I think, in the net bottom line result in greater human progress as well as prosperity.
That's interesting. So we will now take questions, because I've got a lot. This is also streamed on Facebook and YouTube, so I've got a lot of questions. So since we have limited time, I'm gonna now take at least 3 questions, and I want whoever wants to take it, you can probably answer that. So we have Noof, who's from the HR department of I won't name the bank here. And she has this question that if she were to adopt the latest AI tools, so apart from, I think there's a CV screening, she has mentioned ATD or something, which is used. So what other tools can they use in HR of a bank from an AI perspective? I know it's a very specific question, but I mean, yeah, anyone wants to take that? Maybe, yeah. You can unmute and talk, Jairaj.
Yeah, well, I'm actually of the opposite opinion on this one. I think HR is one of those jobs that should not be automated too much, especially the screening of resumes. One of the first indicators of a problem in a company is actually hiring the wrong people or promoting the wrong people. And I think those are very human jobs that should not be delegated to machines. Machines can add some intelligence to bring insights forward about what a candidate represents in terms of attitude, value, whatever other things you're looking for. But careful how much we automate with HR. I think that's one of the things that, human connection, as Ajit was mentioning, the ability to trust, to build that rapport and have, it's human beings are not predictable. So why are we trying to apply a predictability framework to something that is inherently unpredictable? It takes a human to know a human, kind of a thing. I feel like that's where I come at when it comes to HR functions.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and we have another question from Nicole. He's the head of an innovation lab here at a bank. And Ajit, maybe you could answer this question. So the question is, how do you make the innovation lab more of a productive entity rather than just a showcase entity?
So without getting into too many details, because I don't know where confidentiality starts and ends, I used to run a program for Siemens of Germany, but for one of their Indian outlets, which was their corporate innovation program. Now, the answer to Nicole's question is what comes out of it. So for example, if we do a training session, which the employees regard as a holiday, and they enjoy, they do exercises, they do a lot of things, there's a lot of laughter, there's free pizza and Pepsi being consumed and stuff, and then nothing comes out of it. It served a limited purpose of giving a relaxation and a rest and recreation. But if something comes out of it, this is where the Siemens example was so relevant, that at the end of it, and it was it was a 14-day program. At the end of those 14 days, the expectation was that each team, which could be 2, 3, or 4 people, would actually come up with a new idea. It could be a service idea, product idea, consulting idea, advisory idea, or whatever, which would add revenue to Siemens. As in that was the objective, that this will bring in money, right? So that is one tangible outcome. There could be other tangible outcomes. For instance, since you said crypto and CBDC, one of the world's largest crypto exchanges, depending on how you measure largest, is Binance, which is currently embroiled in a court case in the US. But they have a program called Zero to Hero. Now, what they do is that they go through a usual selection process that, let us say, any innovation program does. That's why it's called Zero to Hero. But the interesting thing is that while it starts with a certain set of lectures, then it allows a sandbox kind of approach where you can build things, etc. But it culminates at the end of 6 months. So that was 2 weeks, this is 6 months, and that can vary. It culminates at the end of 6 months where everybody who has done well, and what is called well is actually defined to some extent, is awarded $50,000. They have to go through a 6-month program completely remotely. So now here what happens is that people have a certain outcome in mind, and the parameters of those outcome are those which align the interest of the participant with the organization, right? So in the first case, the outcome was tangible, that it has to create revenue. In the second case, the outcome was tangible, that you will win a prize. But what I have found is that despite which process you take, if the outcome is something which you can create an aspiration for, right? For example, I used to head the technology incubator at IIT Bombay. It was called SIGN, Society for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. There, faculty members, researchers, and students could come up with product ideas. And while there was another division which allowed them to offer consulting or licensing facilities, which was not under my purview, but if they wanted to convert their invention or ideas to an organization, to a startup, they would come to the SIGN, where I was the CEO for a very brief period, and we would help them commercialize it and actually create a startup fundraise for it. So there, whatever innovation they were doing were resulting in actually a startup. So I find that when human beings are shown, however, whatever is the probability, however distant it might be, that this could happen, right? There is a golden gates of heaven at the end of this. They will perform the right worship that may cause, a good outcome. So I think that come up with a tangible outcome, define the parameters that would lead to that outcome, that makes a very big difference. Focus exclusively on the path. By the way, the path is the most important thing. The journey is the most important thing, but it cannot be 100% without an outcome.
Interesting, very interesting. So we have now two questions. They are basically similar. There are others also, but I think I found these two similar. So it's from pardon if I don't pronounce it correctly. It's Shaima. Shaima is asking this question, and Huda also has something similar to that. So the question is, both are I mean, what we are worrying, I think they are from the same department. Both are tellers, and they want to know, I know this is the job of a bank and they should be telling them, but I mean, since they're asking, I can probably ask you to give an advice. So if they were to upskill themselves, what are the kind of things that they should be preparing themselves, or getting themselves skilled with? So if any one or two things that comes to your mind, both of you, I want you to answer this. Yeah. You can unmute and talk there, right? Yeah.
I guess I can get started. So Ajit has another minute to think about something smarter. I would say soft skills, like Ajit was mentioning, and I was thinking when he was talking about the teller example, the thought that was coming in my mind was, exactly. I mean, ATMs happened and still we have human tellers because there's a human function to be performed. If more and more of the branch is inside my mobile phone already, what is the role of human beings in a bank? Teller is one dimension of a human role, one example of a human role. There are many others. I would say that, as far as branch banking goes, human relationships, customer relationships, which largely require soft skills, exceptional, developing exceptional soft skills. That's a big one. And then maybe even asking yourself, what else is, exciting and fun for you? There are other functions and departments, depending on how flexible the culture of a bank is, internal movement may be possible horizontally or whatever. You can certainly look into getting into the risk team, or getting into, investment side, getting into maybe marketing of the bank itself, whatever your passions are. But there are many of those jobs which will, for a long time to come, still need humans to play with AI to get the job done.
True, very true. Ajit, yeah.
Since we're in the last minute, the point is that the answer that I'm going to give you for Shaima and the other Uday or whatever, Huda, the likelihood is that as soon as you hear my answer, you will say, that's impractical. And the fact is that that would prove that my answer was correct. Because what tends to happen is that when you are engaging, and this has nothing to do with being a teller, it could be being a class teacher, it could be being a doctor or general practitioners. If you are saying that the role is about to get disrupted, which is the question that we are dealing with in this entire session, and then when you try to see, okay, how do I deal with disruption? That answer will usually be drastic enough, to make you wonder whether it is practical. In a framework level, like Jairaj says, there's only two things you can do. You can ask yourself, how can I be a better teller? Or if not a teller, what else can I be? It breaks down only into these two parts. Now, let's explore the first one where you might find it impractical. You might say, listen, my role is very clear. There is no room to be a better teller, right? If this is actually to be assumed to be true, then frankly, it's going to get disrupted. If the tellers or the teller's role has reached its culmination point, then a machine, if they can do that role, will always be superior. Machine doesn't sleep, machine doesn't have moods, machine doesn't get distracted, right? It sometimes may have to be rebooted, but that is the extent of it, right? So I think that there may be a role there. I'll give you an example. When that entire question about banking, which I'm broadening this from being a teller to being a banker in general, that relationship banking versus digital banking came up. One of the things that was lost in digital banking, which actually should have been gained, is having strong feedback loops. Because ordinarily what happens is, let us say 3 or 4 customers come in a day and say something to a teller, which may not even be the teller's role, and say, why can't you do this? Or I had this problem, or blah, blah, blah. It could even be that the signboard was not clear, I couldn't find the branch, or blah, blah, blah. This creates a feedback loop. In technology, the ATM machine does not have that ability to give you that element. But that role could be important for a bank. I'm giving a simplistic example, but I think that is why, how can you be a better teller? I, to be honest, don't know the answer to that. But I would exhort you to not automatically dismiss my suggestions. That can't be done, as in it's a very standardized process. Think that there is a gun to your head and somebody is saying, tell me, how can you be a better teller? Maybe you'll come up with ideas. And the second part is, if not a teller, using the skill set that you've got as a teller, what else can you be? Right? That or identical skill set. There are going to be enough roles, and probably better roles, probably more remunerative roles, that you might become eligible for. Last thought is, in the year, well, I can't remember the year because it was the late 90s. At one point of time, I had actually, when I had 38 employees in my entrepreneurial organization, I actually said, you know what, I can't work with you guys because certain in very extreme HR problems had taken place. And I put up a job ad in the Times of India and told them all to reapply. It was very surprising to me that more than half of the people applied for jobs that they were not doing. So the trainer took a job of a marketer, the marketer applied for the job of a trainer. And I was like, oh my God, this could have been the best thing, because if this was the latent talent or aspiration, then it is best that this came about. So that is another very important part, that maybe there are other things that you can do with a similar or adjacent skill set.
Yeah, very interesting way of looking at it, and thank you for sharing that. So we will now we are not taking any more questions. We have actually come towards the end. So thank you for giving a very interesting insight. And then we have Lisa, who's going to conclude the session. So yeah, over to you.
In my opinion, as we navigate the ever-changing landscape of AI, it is important to remember that our collective response to this transformative technology will shape the future. I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to our esteemed panelists, Mr. Jairaj, Mr. Jeet, and Dr. Suyash, for sparing time from their busy schedules and for their insightful contributions. I would also like to extend my appreciation to our 100-plus participants for their active engagement and valuable questions during this webinar. Thank you all for making this event a success. Goodbye.
So I think we'll end the session with this, and maybe